lovers, and welcome. I want to start off by saying I am so blessed to be in a position to suggest tips and tools and even products that can help you lead a tantric life of liberation and expansion. And one of my absolute favorite places to purchase spiritual and sexy items is Wands. Wands.com, spelled Wands. Wands sells, you guessed it, crystal pleasure wands, along with so much more, including yoni eggs, free bleed blankets, other amazing products for yoni steaming. I've been using these products and products similar to them for the better part of a decade, and they have been incredible allies in my journey of sexual healing and expanding my orgasmic potential. And I'm so grateful to be friends with the owner, Courtney. She's amazing. She has so generously provided us all with a discount code for 15% off, and that code is Leola. Leola. You can use it on their website, www.wands.com. Again, the code is Leola, Leola, for 15% off. I'll also make sure that this is linked in the show notes. So thank you for listening, and you're welcome for the inevitable pleasure and healing that is coming your way with these products. Now, let's get into the episode. Hello, and welcome to Talk Tantra to Me. It is such an honor to be holding space for this divine knowledge to make its way into your ears and lifestyle. So right now I am live on Instagram hosting a Q&A session, a question and answer session. If you are here live, hello, it's so good to see you. And if you are listening to the recording, this live will end up on the Talk Tantra to Me podcast. Hello to you as well. If you are joining live, I do recommend if you have a question that comes alive for you, please put it in the chat box. As I have time throughout the Q&A, I will answer some of those questions. I did take a bunch of questions from my audience throughout the last week, and I was overwhelmed with the number of questions. So I do have them all here. I'm not sure if I'm going to be able to get to all of them today, but the beautiful thing is that there were definitely a few questions that were asked at the same time or were asked about something similar, and that has given me a really good idea of some content that I'll create in the future. So thank you for that. And maybe I'll do a part 2 of the Q&A because there were so many questions. But again, if you are popping on and joining live, feel free to pop a question about Tantra, sacred sexuality, spirituality, high vibe relating, my work, anything along those lines in the chat box. And again, I will try to get to those as well. Hello, hello. I see some more people joining. Let's go ahead and jump into some of the questions that were asked throughout the week from my audience. So the first question is, actually, before I get into the question, I also just want to give a little background of Tantra for those that are brand new to Tantra. So Tantra is a spiritual belief lineage. Some even call it a religion, although that doesn't totally align for me. But Tantra is a Sanskrit word, and it is actually 2 words put together. So tan means to expand and tra means to liberate. So when you think about that definition, you can consider that Tantra is about creating a life that feels expansive and liberating for you, creating a life that turns you on. And what I love about this definition of Tantra is that it's very subjective. What is expansive and liberating for one person is going to be very different for the next person. And what is expansive and liberating for us individually will change throughout our lifetime. So I'll be answering questions that are around that idea of how to live a more expansive and liberating life. I do like to work a lot with sexuality, and sexuality is part of living an expansive and liberating life. And for so many of us, the only time that we really allow ourselves to fully feel expansive and liberated is during intimacy or sex. So it all connects. Okay, now let's get into some of these questions that y'all asked throughout the week. So the first question is, how did you get into Tantra? So long story short, in the essence of time and all of the beautiful questions you guys asked, I got into Tantra because I had a lot of limiting beliefs, shame, and sexual trauma. And I kind of stumbled into this world via a lover. And I really kind of got into it first because I was really enlivened by the sexy bits of it. But not too far down the line, I was healing my inner child and, you know, working on deeper wounds around my body and my family. And it really transformed everything for me because Tantra is not just about sexuality. If you're wanting to know more about my story specifically, and get a little bit deeper into it, I recommend checking out my podcast. One of the recent episodes, episode 164, is called Become a Pleasure Priestess. And I share more about how I stumbled into this work more seriously and how I kind of really took it on and went all in because I came from a very conservative background and then ended up working for a organization, a nonprofit that freed young girls from sex trafficking and like the whole journey. Like there's so many interesting bits and pieces. So if you're interested in hearing more about me and my journey, check out episode 164. Okay, next question. How often do you masturbate outside partnered pleasure? This is a great question. And I will say, I don't have a hard and fast rule to how often I am masturbating outside of connecting with my husband or any other lover. I do feel like I probably masturbate just as much, or if not more, than I connect with my husband. It kind of just depends on where we're both at individually. I do have a high sex drive. I do use masturbation as a part of my spiritual practice to evoke inner peace and create a more restorative and transformational quality to my energy and to my way of being in any given day. There's a phrase called medibation, which is like masturbation and meditation, or masturbation and meditation put together, medibation. And that is something that's a big part of my spiritual practice. I like to say that regardless of whether we're talking about self-pleasure or partner pleasure, it's more about the quality than the quantity to me. And it's also really about intention too. And if you're really worrying about, okay, I'm doing all of this self pleasure and I'm not connecting with my partner enough, I think that it's worth looking at what is your why for, doing more masturbation. Growing up, a lot of us have inherited a lot of shame around touching our genitals and around masturbation. So there might be some sexual shadow work to do there. There is a free sexual shadow work workbook in the link in my bio. That would be a really good place to start. Um, but yeah, I would really get curious about like, is there a shaming piece for you masturbating? Or maybe is there a sex addiction at play? I would probably say it's more likely to be the shame piece and letting that go. And maybe having a conversation with your partner about having more intimacy and what that intimacy means to you specifically. Okay. Again, if you're joining the live, feel free to pop a question in the chat box. I'm going off of some questions that were asked in my stories this week. Hello, hello. Okay. Next question. Why are some Tantra practitioners on an ego high? This one I feel a little bit of a charge with whoever asked this question. And I'm going to say, look, I'm not the ego police, okay? In fact, I am a bigger fan of integrating the ego rather than killing it off or abandoning it. I like to say, make your ego an employee of your purpose. The ego is there for a reason. And in Tantra, we really believe that all parts of ourselves have a divine and sacred nature. And it's not about abandoning these parts of ourselves, it's about integrating them and having a healthy place for that energy to play out. And so for me, I can see that my ego, like even just now, it's like, okay, I'm showing up on a live on Instagram and I have this incredible wisdom and these tools that I want to share with these humans and make impact. And that's obviously very purpose driven. and very lovely. But I also know if I take care of my body and treat my body like a temple and show up with that energy, it's also going to be more attractive to people. And that's actually meaning that my message is going to be received by more people, probably. We're naturally attracted to people that, tend to take better care of themselves. So that's something to consider as well. But yeah, make ego an employee of your purpose. I'll use another example. So when I was manifesting my husband for years leading up to when I finally met him and really called him in, I deep down longed for life partnership. I longed for it, but I wouldn't let myself have that desire because I felt like it was selfish. I felt like there was an ego piece to it. And so instead, I focused on things like world peace, as like the thing that I would manifest. When I finally let myself desire want what I want or desire what I desired, I realized that actually accepting my desire for something that someone might perceive as, egotistical or selfish could actually really support me in bringing my purpose to more people. And for those of you that have witnessed Andrew in, any of my in-person containers or even on the podcast, you can see how his presence in my life totally transcends the individual benefits that I receive. It also deeply touches my work and has made my work so much more impactful as well. I'm seeing a question here. How would someone learn about Tantra other than your fab content and podcast? Totally beginner to knowing what it means. So I actually have this question or a similar question here. So I'm going to wait to answer that one. Stay tuned or listen to the replay for that one. But let's continue. So I also had two questions that people asked that were a little bit similar. So I'm going to go ahead and say both of them and then answer. One person asked me, tell me a story of meeting God through your yoni. For those that aren't aware, yoni is the Sanskrit word for pussy or vagina. It means sacred space, sacred cave. So tell me a story of meeting God through your yoni, a spiritual and sexual experience. Then another person asked, what's the most supernatural experience you've had while practicing Tantra? And I have to say, first off, it's so hard to choose just one story or experience because the more I've integrated a tantric lifestyle and tantric principles into my way of being, it truly feels, like these days, most of my, tantric or sexual experiences involve meeting God or have some level of supernatural, whether that's meeting God within myself or meeting God in my partner or just seeing the divinity around me. And in fact, Tantra is about finding and seeing the divine in everything. And that's a practice in of itself to do so. Like, how can I find God even in the most challenging moments of my life? How can I find God in the most devastating realities of humanity? And I'm actually going to be teaching a little bit about this tomorrow in the Higher Love Club. If you're interested, the link in bio has all the information, but some lineages of classical and more shamanic tantra aim to fully bring like the taboo into their spiritual practice. And by taboo, I mean things like, a lot of lineages stay away from sex and death and money and like war and like these really intense, parts of human experience and kind of ask us to just stay in the light and the love and the peace and self-love and stay in your own energy, right? But these other lineages of shamanic tantra and even classical tantra, bring in the taboo as a way to fully understand the belief that God is in everything. That being said, I will share two stories of my own experiences feeling or experiencing God in my body. One is a more white tantric experience, and the other is a more red tantric experience. So, once upon a time, I was doing this tantric meditation where it was an incorporation of breath work and also activating and contracting my pelvic floor and doing different like energy circuits and mudras. And I did this like 30-minute practice. And I felt the energy really like rocking through my body. And it felt like I was about to orgasm, but I had no touching of my genitals. It was just completely like in my body. And I thought about masturbating after it, but I actually decided to not. And I went for a walk with my dog. I lived in LA at the time, and I went to the park, Griffith Park. There's like a little like Ferndale area at the bottom of the trails, and there's like this little stream that runs through. And I took off my shoes and I put my feet in the water. And as soon as I put my feet in the water, I literally left my body and like shooted out. I felt my soul like shoot out and just be in the cosmos and be kind of like floating up. And like it was like I reconnected with oneness. Like my soul left my individual experience and merged back with source. And I like, there were all of these like visions and stars and like, but mostly it was just this quality of like oneness and love. It felt like I did mushrooms and I like I had no substances running through my body at all. And then I popped back down into this reality. And I had this moment of like, oh, fuck, like, how long have I been gone? And I had my dog, and my dog was off leash. And I'm like, where did he go? And it couldn't have been too long because my dog hadn't gone too far, but it felt much longer. Like it almost felt like eternity. And that was just one of those moments where I felt the power of my body and felt the energy of life force and my sexual energy without actually having to be sexually intimate with myself or another in a very obvious way. So that was really powerful. A second experience of finding God in my yoni, my pussy, my body. So this kind of is an umbrella. I'm thinking about like I like there are like two or three times in particular, but I'll speak into one time in particular. But it was during anal sex, and it was kind of like the opposite of the first story that I told, where I really went out into oneness and consciousness. It was one where I was fully in my body and feeling connected to my humanity and my heart and my inner queen all at once. And it was during anal sex with my husband. And it was a level of surrender that I had never witnessed before. And like it was a surrender to myself and my highest self first, because I think that that's when we are surrendering from a really conscious space. That's really where who we're really surrendering to is our highest self, because we are choosing the experience. We're conscious and we are empowered in any moment to shift our reality or to ask for something else. But at the same time, when we're surrendering for anal sex or BDSM or any, more kinky way of surrendering with a partner, we're kind of like asking our partner to hold our power for a moment, but we can take it back at any time. But this was probably the most surrendered I had ever been. And it felt like, when I had that experience out of my body, I felt God, but it also was like out of my body in the cosmos. And I felt it in my body, but it was like out of body. It's so hard to describe these like esoteric experiences. But with anal sex, it was like fully in my body. I felt like instead of my soul going out into the ether and the universe came to me and was all in my body. It's giving me chills just to say this. And that was really powerful. So I'll leave it at that. There's an episode of the podcast all about anal pleasure. It's a recent one. If you're interested in diving into that space from a safe and empowered way, check that out. All right. Again, if you're joining the live, feel free to pop a question in the chat box, but I'm going to keep going with the questions that people have already put forth. Okay. The next one. Tell me about your most romantic night with your husband. There's been so many, and I'm really, really blessed in that way. My husband and I do, semi-regular Tantra date nights. We also just have like romanticism built into our relating structure, and our community is really revolved around that energy. Um, and if I had to pick one, it would be this foot washing ceremony that I did with my husband. So, um, I kind of set up this gorgeous setting. I put down a splash blanket, or like a free bleed blanket, which is like waterproof. And I had him sit on the couch, and I had some hot water in a bowl and like some scrubs and some towels and soaps and like rose petals and all of these different things. and I washed his feet. And then we switched and he washed my feet. And while we were washing each other's feet, we talked about all the things that we loved and appreciated about each other, the things that we were grateful for, the wishes that we have for each other and our relationship. And it actually was not sexual at all. It was just completely intimate, like beautiful spiritual and emotional energy. And the energetics of washing someone's feet is so devotional. So to be in the energy of devotion to my husband by washing his feet and then to receive that back was really, really powerful. And it really, again, put us in the energy of you are my king, I am your queen, especially for two people that are very like type A, really like to be in control, to just lay back and like fully be in the receiver mode and not have to do anything through the ritual was beautiful. And also being in the humbling position of, yes, I am a queen, but I also have this equal, this divine partner, and I'm going to devote myself to this thing that is bigger than me, which is our relationship, is so juicy. From the beginning, Andrew and I have decided that our partnership is one that is 1 + 1 = 3, which means that we're creating something that couldn't be created just with one person. We're creating something that is bigger than us. And the foot washing ritual really felt like an amplifier of that energetic. Okay, next question. Is it possible to have sex daily and not have your health affected? Okay, so I am not a doctor. That needs to be said. I'm not a doctor, but there have been plenty of like scientific studies, legitimate studies. I don't have those studies in front of me, but they have actually proved that having sex or even just masturbating is actually really good for your health. It reduces stress. It improves circulation. It can regulate your nervous system. Like there's all these beautiful things. And if you've had really conscious, high vibrational intimacy, either with yourself or with a partner. And what I mean is like to have that, you really have to do the shadow work to not feel ashamed or to not feel a lot of like worry about your body or to not have past sexual trauma coming up, because those things can actually take away from your presence and make it harder for your nervous system to actually relax. But if you have had that type of intimacy before in your life, you know what I mean? Like after sex, you have this like healed peace come through, this peace where it's like, like I feel rejuvenated. Sometimes you can feel even more energized after sexual intimacy. Um, yeah, there's another episode of the podcast. I keep pushing other episodes of the podcast. This is kind of becoming a listen to this episode. But there's just so much content there. There is an episode of the podcast called The 4 Types of Sex. And I talk about particularly the last 2 types of sex are restorative and transformational and can kind of give you a little bit more evidence of what's possible in your sexuality so that it is net positive, so that it is healthy for you to have sex more frequently, if not every day. So to answer your question, is it possible to have sex daily and not have your health affected? My opinion is that no, you having sex every day will likely affect your life, but most likely in a more positive way rather than a negative way, especially if you have done, the sexual shadow work, you've healed your sexual traumas, you've addressed, the societal conditioning, the religious conditioning that you've received. And you're able to really fully be present for your pleasure and maximize that energy. But as everything goes, it really goes back to intention. So where are you coming from in your desire to have more, a higher quantity of sex? I will say I like to use sexual energy like with an analogy. So sexual energy and money are actually both ruled by the sacral chakra, which is our second chakra. And interestingly, they both move kind of in the same way. They're both kind of like water. They're both in flow. They're both regenerative. Like there's all the money out in the world for you to make. You can always make more money, right? And with sexuality or sexual energy, generally speaking, you can always tap into that especially again if you've healed your bits so that you feel like you can actually be present with the sexuality. But like for men, right, they might ejaculate and they might not be able to get hard immediately again, but the next day they can, and the next day after that. So it is this regenerative energy, sexual energy. So let's imagine with an analogy that money is the same way. Let's say that, $100,000 lands in your bank account every day and you don't have to do anything to receive that. It just lands there. Just because you have this abundance of money, does that mean that you would go waste that money at Walmart just buying a bunch of crap you don't need? Would you like continue to buy a bunch of fast food and non-organic produce and like other foods that that there's a better option for you, and you have all the abundance to like get something better? Would you still focus on all of this like quantity more and more and more, even though you knew you were going to get more money every day? No, you probably wouldn't. You would probably invest that resource money into things that felt in alignment with your highest self. So you would maybe, buy better quality food. You would donate some of that money to a cause that you believed in, that you feel is going to make the world a better place. You might invest that money into a company that you really believe in, or a company that you feel will really take off and even maybe amplify and increase your money over time. So the idea here is that it's the same with your sexuality. Just because it's regenerative, just because you can have more sexual energy every day, doesn't mean that you want to waste it on experiences that aren't really in alignment with your highest self. For example, watching like, I don't know, porn that like actually makes you feel more shameful after than inspires you. For example, and I want to say, I don't think that porn inherently is bad. There's high quality porn, there's low quality porn. And I talk about that on the podcast. So if you're interested, find that. Okay. Again, if you're joining live, feel free to pop a chat in the chat box. I'm going to continue with the questions. Hello, lovers. Please bear with me for a brief interruption with a vulnerable share and offer from my heart. So when I first began my journey with spiritual intimacy and sacred sexuality, all I could afford were books and free podcasts. I was just out of college in my early 20s and honestly very, very broke. And I'm so grateful for all the complimentary, kind words and affordable wisdom that have gotten me where I am today. Price shouldn't deter you from healing. It shouldn't deter you from living the life you love or from reclaiming the most powerful energy in your body. It's my belief that time and commitment are also very powerful investments, especially when you're just dipping your toes in the water. You'll know when it's time to make the bigger cash investments in your journey. But let's begin together today with free love from my heart to yours. As you've already discovered, this podcast is free and it includes so much life-changing wisdom, but I'd also love to guide you to some free offers that are on my website, including a downloadable sexual shadow work workbook and a pleasure positive meditation. Both of these resources are amazing places to start in integrating the tantric principles of expansion and liberation into your life. And you can access these at www.talktantratome.com/free or find a direct link in the show notes. Now let's get back to the episode. So someone asked, Tantra and family life. We have 2 little kids. How do we start practicing Tantra? So, disclaimer, I am not a mother yet. I intend to be a mother relatively soon, in the next few years. But I have coached plenty of couples that have children and or are pregnant, and that's been super inspirational for me and so beautiful. And I've been able to witness over a period of time what works and what doesn't work. So a couple pieces here. First thing is you have to set aside time for these practices, but it doesn't always need to be a long period of time, especially if you have kids. I know that can be a little bit harder. Ideally, you have, one night a week where you can have a date night, you're kid free, you can go a little bit deeper into some of these intimacy practices and actually create a Tantra date night ritual, which if you go on my blog and or on my podcast, there's content on how to create a tantric date night. But even if you don't have that built into your schedule, or that feels inaccessible right now, you can even start practicing Tantra with short exercises that are like 15 minutes. I just got off of the Tantra Love Retreat this weekend, and there were lots of parents there. And I was saying to them, like, we did a couple of different exercises, and I highlighted, hey, look, notice that this last exercise was only 15 minutes, and notice how much more connected you feel after this 15-minute exercise. And I'm working on getting more of those exercises live for you guys to access. I know that it's not accessible for everyone to come to one of our 3-day retreats, but if you can, I highly recommend it. And there is an episode of the podcast from a mom. She came and shared her experience at the retreat, how it helped her partnership, how it helped her mothership, motherhood. And that's episode 134. It's called Reignite Your Spark with Tantra. Okay, beautiful. Let's continue. Oh, and I'll add one more thing on that. I will be teaching in the Pleasure Priestess, my program, my mastermind for women, how to lead these types of rituals. I'll be teaching a lot of these rituals that are short, long, can be adapted to be either, can be adapted to work with your couple, by yourself, or, in a group of people, facilitated. So if you're looking for lots of little rituals every month inside of the Pleasure Priestess Initiation, you're getting a whole new ritual, which is really like 3 rituals in one, again, because you can adapt it to yourself, your beloved, and to a group, which is awesome. Okay, let's continue. How to find a play party for the first time. Okay, here's my number one advice. Come to Austin. Come to Austin. There's tons of conscious play spaces here, including mine, the Naked Soul Society. If you'd like to apply, the link is in my bio. That being said, there's lots of others as well here. And by and far, I find that the play spaces I've been to in Austin are pretty conscious, which is awesome. Um, you can't find play parties everywhere, nor can you guarantee that they're going to be high vibrational. And like, to me, it's really important to go to a space like this, especially if you're new to a space like this, when it is well curated, so that you can feel safe to actually explore more and to fully express yourself and not actually re-traumatize yourself. So it is important to have a high level of discernment if you're going to embark in group play, and also to let go of attachment to any particular outcomes that you might desire when coming to these spaces. The first play parties I went to were not very conscious. They were curated, but they were more curated for like wealth and attractiveness rather than consciousness, and self-awareness. And I found that it was really fun to go and to watch, but I didn't really feel inspired to interact. So that's something to consider as well. If you are looking to connect with more, high vibe, sex positive people, my recommendation is to, even just Google like play parties in Phoenix, tantra workshops in Boulder, like whatever. And honestly, once you start getting into those spaces and connecting with people, even in these like more basic workshops, you'll likely like make friends with people that have connections to more high level workshops or experiences like play parties. Um, I definitely recommend like just tapping into the local Tantra community. There's a bunch of groups on Facebook that's like Tantra events and Tantra retreats and things like that. If you just search Tantra, you can probably find some awesome groups on Facebook to join. Sacred Arrows is another resource. Sacred Arrows is a directory for tantric and, sex positive practitioners. And oftentimes, if you work with a practitioner and you really vibe with them and they vibe with you, they might have some local connections. They might even be facilitating things like this. So that's another option. Come to our retreats. You go to our retreats, you meet people, you might be inspired to tap into their communities, etc. As a further resource on this topic, specifically of play parties, I recorded an episode with my husband for the podcast called Play Party 101. It's episode 129 of Talk Tantra to Me. I'm just going to scroll through and see if anyone's asked any other questions in the chat. Let's see. Okay, someone asked, does physical fitness have a connection with Tantra practice? I'm not sure if I totally understand this question, but I'm going to do my best to answer it. So, does physical fitness have a connection to tantric practices? First of all, there is such a thing as like tantra yoga and even like going for a tantric walk. Really, what tantra is about is making any lived experience into an opportunity to find God, to see divinity, to be in the present moment, to make every experience a meditation of sorts. And that can be definitely a thing with our bodies. So many of us experience like a high from running and feel like running is our meditation. For example, taking this in another direction, um, I feel that there is such a thing in Tantra as treating your body as sacred, treating your body as a temple. And that does mean taking care of your physical body and exercising. So I think that exercise very much has a way into the Tantra world. Let's see, any other questions? I'm going to go back to the questions that are here and then I'll answer some more that are being asked now. And again, I might have to split this into two parts. So if you have a question, please put it forth and I can go back and look and maybe add it to the next Q&A as well. Okay. Someone asked, what money slash general advice do you have for entrepreneurship? I love this. I think that it's really, really powerful when people want to become financially free. Obviously, Tantra, the tra part of Tantra means liberation. So, financial freedom is a very big piece of that, in my opinion, especially in this world today where we have relied so much more on a capitalistic society. And oftentimes, I know that a lot of people that are probably tuning in are meeting entrepreneurship from the intention of bringing consciousness into their work and into the world, maybe bringing their purpose of healing or coaching or yoga or whatever into the world. And that's so, so beautiful. And even if your business isn't very obviously in the healing modalities, I think that it's so important and powerful for people that have normal jobs, quote unquote, to bring just this energy and way of being to their teams. So someone like my husband, for example, who works in he works for a tech company and seeing how he's transformed his leadership style just from being in this world is absolutely beautiful. And I've had clients that are, working for some of the biggest tech companies in the world, Apple, Microsoft, and seeing how their way of being and how they bring it to a company that literally touches billions of people is so, so beautiful and powerful. So I just want to say, awesome that you're thinking about this. Let's answer your question now. So, what money slash general advice do you have for someone taking the leap into entrepreneurship? So, in the world of money making, I hear people talk about two ways of doing things. And the first is this like hustle, hustle, hustle energy. It's very masculine in nature. It's very action oriented, determination oriented. And you're kind of in this energy of like pushing through. And then the second way of being is like being a magnet, like becoming magnetic, being an energetic match. And this is more of a feminine approach to entrepreneurship and money. And the feminine is very receptive and she encourages us to like flow with what feels good and flow with what feels aligned, and like the opposite of pushing, just like being the embodiment of the work that you do and trusting that people will come to you because of that. And in my opinion, to truly prosper financially and in our businesses, we need to have a healthy balance of both. And we need to know when it's go time, when to build, when to set ourselves up for success, when to create the foundations and the administration and the behind the scenes. And we also need to know when to give ourselves a break and to vision and to heal and to rest and to be in ritual and to let our work and the universe work together to do some divine magic. So that's like one little piece of advice for this Q&A. That being said, I have a whole mini course on the topic of money as a lover in the Higher Love Club. You can join in the link in bio. It's a very accessible membership. And then for those that are wanting a more tailored approach, I do business coaching for those who desire to make impact in the world and be abundantly rewarded for doing so. So there are a couple of things for you. All right, I'm going to go to my next question here on this list. Can you do this work without having to recall repressed trauma? So what this person is asking is like, can I step into tantric work of any kind, body work, pleasure priestessry, sexology, sex coaching, etc.? Can you do this work without having to recall repressed sexual trauma from my childhood? I know that there is sexual trauma from my childhood that I've erased from my memory. I have processed the energy around it, but would rather not unlock the full memory. Okay, so this is a nuanced question. First, yes, if you feel like you have fully healed and processed the sexual trauma, then I think that it is possible to do this work and not have that repressed memory come up and not necessarily have to do additional processing around it if you have fully healed it. In fact, doing this work might actually help you or encourage you to heal any lingering traumas, or make you aware of other societal conditionings or shame or judgment that you might have around intimacy or sexuality that you haven't been integrating. And that's a good thing. Like, that's a powerful thing. That's a reason to do this. I know that doing this work has helped me embody this healing even more and heal even more of the layers of my own sexual education, religious trauma, etc. That being said, if the memory wants to come up, it's going to come up. There's not much you can do to like make sure that it's not going to resurface. This memory could be triggered by this work or something completely different in your life. And there's nothing that you can really do to make sure that it doesn't. But I would trust that the memory is only going to come up and be like fully revealed to you if it was truly in service for you, if it was truly meant to happen for you to remember it because there's even deeper healing and acceptance available for you. That being said, it is also my belief that a lot of us do erase our like memories, our traumatic memories, because we don't need to know all the details, and consciously remembering all of the details can possibly do more harm than good for our nervous system. So yes, I think you can do this work without having that memory come up, and I wouldn't be attached to it not coming up, and I would trust that it would only come up if it was truly in service. Okay, I'm going to answer one of the questions that are here. Do you think Kundalini energy can be awakened? Did you have experience with it? Uh, yes, I definitely think Kundalini energy can be awakened, and I've experienced it for myself and I've experienced it for others. There are many different ways for Kundalini to awaken. In classical tantric texts, they talk about two main ways that the energy can be awakened. One is like a spontaneous awakening. It's like you're hit by a bolt of lightning. It can come on or be triggered by an experience that happens in your life, or by a revelation with a guru, or by a revelation with plant medicine. There are so many ways that it could spontaneously happen for you. But that can be a quite intense experience and an intense path. It can also come as like more gradual as well, be like a gradual Kundalini awakening. And there have definitely been times where I've had more intense periods or moments where it's like I just went through a dark night of the soul and then something shifted and suddenly it all clicked and I felt the energy rising in my body and I felt myself unlock and align. And there have been other parts of my journey where I felt things be more of a slow burn. And I do think that like there's what does it mean to have a Kundalini awakening is different for one person to the next. But if you're questioning whether you've had one, you're probably on that journey. You've probably either already had a Kundalini awakening or you're on that more slow path. And there's a great book that talks more about this and all things Tantra, classical Tantra, and it's called I can't remember the title right now. I can't remember the title. I think it's called Tantra Awakening. Sorry, guys. Feel free to shoot me a DM anywhere if you're listening to this live or on a recording and just ask me again, and I'll make sure to get you the title of that book. Okay. I'm going to go back to the questions here that were pre-sent in. How do you stop feeling numb after sexual abuse? Does trauma help with this? First of all, I want to say I'm so sorry that you experienced this sexual abuse. It is never okay. It is never fair. And I really commend you for taking a look at it and trying to heal it and seeing what you can do to liberate yourself from it so that you can have pleasure again and feel deeply and actually potentially even use this abuse or this trauma as inspiration for what's possible for you and others in your life and as evidence of your ability to get through really hard things that were not your fault at all. So, does Tantra help with this? Yes, Tantra can certainly help with healing sexual abuse, healing sexual trauma. That's how I really came into this work deeply and why I actually have fully dedicated my life to this work, because I know the power of it. And I know that it is my duty to share what has worked for me and what I've seen work for countless other people. There's a whole other conversation about this. And I think that if you do have sexual abuse or sexual trauma, it's really important to get some more tailored and curated support. And maybe consider working with a Tantra practitioner or a sexual therapist of some kind. That being said, we do tend to store trauma in the body. And this is proven by science. If you read The Body Keeps the Score, that has all the information you need to know that the trauma that we experience is stored in our muscles and in our tissue. And Tantra has a practice called, it's kind of like a tantric / shamanic sexual practice called de-armoring. And the intention of de-armoring or sacred spot massage is to realize that, we can do a deep tissue massage on our bodies, and that helps us get out knots and work out some of those things that we're holding, that tension. But we also need a deep tissue massage of sorts for our energetic bodies, our spiritual bodies, our sexual bodies. And that's really what, sexual de-armoring or tantric body work is about. It's about helping you, move through those pieces and also see if there's space for more ecstatic awareness and pleasure. So I would recommend for you to actually do some de-armoring work, whether by yourself or with a tantric body worker. You can find a body worker at sacredarrows.com. I mentioned that previously. I also talk about de-armoring and sacred spot in episode 119 of the Talk Tantra to Me podcast. So consider checking that out as well. But definitely Tantra can help you with this stuff. Feel free to reach out to me if you have any additional questions. I'd be happy to support you on this. Okay. Next question. I'm going to scroll through and see if there are any more here. Someone asked, do you ever think about making OnlyFans content just for people to enjoy? I like your content now, but I would be interested in that for sure. So I have thought about it. I'm not going to be doing OnlyFans anytime soon. I just find that the work that I'm feeling most inspired by and most alive by, and what is the best use of my time and expertise, has more to do with teaching about Tantra in the ways that I'm currently doing it. If I were to do a Tantric OnlyFans, that it would probably be that. It would be an OnlyFans that's focused on Tantra. I do have a Patreon from back in my modeling days that you can find in the link in my bio, but I'm not active there at all. If you want more regular connection with me, I recommend the Higher Love Club, which is my membership. Okay. I'm going to go back to this list of questions that were previously submitted. Okay. This was something that someone asked on the live as well. So I'm happy we're getting here. What is the first step you recommend to practicing Tantra? It depends on if you're wanting to just dip a toe in and get a little taste, or if you're feeling like the sacred call and you're ready to deep dive. Because if you're ready to deep dive, I really recommend going to a retreat, because that's where you're going to have the most embodied experience and Tantra is an embodied practice, you also have the gift of being surrounded by a bunch of other people, and they can be your divine mirrors in this practice. And they also become evidence of what's possible for you. I'm also just coming off of a retreat and feeling like all of the glowy good feels about it. Um, I've mentioned earlier a episode that you can listen to if you want to hear from one of our participants, but I would definitely recommend, if you're ready for a deep dive, to come to one of our retreats. We have a women's retreat in April next month, and then our next co-ed retreats in September. If you're just wanting to like dip a toe in, listen to the podcast, Talk Tantra to Me, and get some Tantra books. There's plenty out there. I recommend kind of doing a little bit of research because there's so many different opinions about Tantra and different lineages, and just see like what is lighting you up and calling you in, and start there. If you're looking for something kind of in the middle that's like a little bit of a dip, maybe like getting like knee deep, I would recommend the Higher Love Club, which is my online community, or the Turned On by Life course. So the Turned On by Life course is a self-paced course, and it's meant to help you create a life that is worth being like super excited about and turned on by and inspired by. It's a journey through the Kundalini chakra system, and it's kind of my like intro to like, here's like the understanding of Tantra overall, and here's how to create your own unique expression of Tantra in your life. Cool. Okay. Oh, guys, there's so many questions. I'm definitely going to have to do a part 2, because I'm looking here and I'm seeing that there's even more questions that you guys have asked. Yeah, okay. I'm gonna keep going with the list that I have here for now, and I'm gonna save these questions. Again, if you have a question, pop it in the chat box. I will do my best to answer it, if not now or on the next Q&A. Okay. Next question. Low libido in both partners in a long-term relationship. Any fixes? So my first question for you would be, is it just low libido, meaning like you have zero sexual drive? Or is there also low intimacy within your partnership as well? Because when you work on your intimacy, your emotional intimacy, your spiritual intimacy, your physical intimacy that isn't sexual, that tends to naturally inspire a higher libido as well. So that would be the first question I would ask. And then my second piece would be, have sex that is worthy of being craved. Have better sex, period. You can probably remember a time in your relationship when sex felt that good that you were craving more of it. And so my suggestion for you would be, what can you do to recreate that? What new tips and tricks and tools can you learn, or try new things to re-inspire that spark? And it might be worth working with a professional to inspire you in that way. But my suggestion is to have a pleasure renaissance of sorts, and also to say that it's just totally normal for it to require more effort to get into like that sexual turn on once you're in a long-term relationship. That's totally normal. And that's why I say that, like, make time, schedule it in. You don't have to decide what you're going to do for each like sex date or tantra date night or sexy playtime or whatever you want to call it. Sorry, my dog is like in the background chewing on something she shouldn't. Nana, stop that. Here, get that. Okay. Um, you don't need to know what you're going to do on the tantra date night, but just make time for it. And generally speaking, once you start to do the very simple things to warm up your body, you'll naturally feel that libido come back. Like, slow down, meet the body with reverence, like make sure that you're relaxed, like get out all the thoughts of the day and just be present with each other and focus on what feels good. There is an episode of the podcast that is specifically on why sex dies in long-term relationships and how to reignite that spark. And that is episode 36. I have on an amazing guest, and she is like kind of an expert in this particular subject. So yeah, check that out. Okay. We don't have a ton more time. I have a couple more questions here, and then I'm gonna go to see if there's any on that you guys have submitted that I have time to answer. And again, if not, I'll answer them another time. So please don't hesitate to pop them in. Okay. How do you call in a conscious man to explore with sexuality without calling in a fuckboy? Okay, so my first suggestion for you is to get really clear on what that looks like for you. What is a conscious man? What qualities does he have? How does he make you feel in your body? Are you wanting a more long-term relationship? Are you wanting someone to just explore with and maybe have a more solo poly chapter with, where you're focusing on your relationship to yourself, but you do want to practice some of these tantric, exercises with, or you do want to have conscious intimacy with? So just get clear on what you're looking for. And then I recommend doing sex magic about it. And there are several podcast episodes about sex magic, as well as a blog post, all of which you can find in the link in my bio. But yeah, do sex magic and then take action and show up as if that man has already walked into your life. So, one thing that you're going to probably want to do is like, even just using the term, like, I don't want to call in a fuck boy, like shifting the belief that a lot of men are fuck boys might be a really good place to start. There are so many awesome men out there that are doing the work, that are for you and want the same things that you want. And let go of an attachment, because even though there's all these men that are doing the work, they're doing the best that they can. And we're all going to be learning in relationships. So take responsibility for your piece, as well as giving grace to people, and being really clear with them when you meet people that you're dating, or that you consider could be, this person to explore with sexually in a conscious way. As they come into your life, communicate with them what you're looking for very clearly early on, to weed out anyone that's not on that vibration. Like, don't wait until the third or fourth date to share exactly what you're looking for. Okay, next question. Personal thoughts on swinging. If everyone is consenting and happy about the arrangement, I'm a big plus one. I'm a big plus one to like sexual interactions that are net positive, or at the very least net neutral to the relationship. And I do feel that swinging could be net positive to your relationship, or it could be net negative to your relationship. It truly is not for everyone. And when you are doing any type of open relating, it will bring up any lingering fears or anxieties about the relationship, about shame or conditioning. It will bring up your anxious attachment. It might bring up your avoidant attachment. And for that reason, open relating is actually an excellent way to grow very quickly. That being said, it's not for everyone. And it can be so activating that it actually keeps you in a perpetual fight, flight, fawn freeze state. And if you're not aware of that shift in your nervous system and and you don't have the tools to support yourself, if you find yourself activated, then open relating probably isn't for you, at least at this time. You do need to have, like, in my opinion, a basic level of self-awareness and sovereignty, ability to take responsibility, ability to self-cope as well. But I'm cool with swinging. Andrew and I, my husband and I, are monogamish, meaning we're not really like all out poly trying to create other relationships with people, but we do at times welcome in other individuals when it feels like it's going to be net positive to our relationship. And I have a podcast episode, I don't know the number, but it is all about that more monogamish relating, if you're interested in that. Okay, I do need to pop off here. I'm going to go ahead and save these other questions that were asked. But I want to say thank you guys so much for being here with me today on this live. I'm really looking forward to going through more of the questions and answering those for you. I'm definitely going to have to do a part 2. But yeah, thank you so much for opening yourself up to the idea of sacred sexuality, Tantra, spirituality, high vibe relating. Have a sexy and spiritual day, and I'll catch you next week on Talk Tantra to Me. Ta-ta. Oops, just kidding. Still here. I have one last thing for y'all. I want to say that the internet is a really, really special place. It's why we're all here right now. And many of us, including me, wouldn't have discovered Tantra or sacred sexuality if it weren't for this nifty invention of the 20th century. And almost none of you would have found my work and my vision without it. I love the internet, and I deeply desire to expand beyond it, to experience more real life love, community, and connection. So I invite you to check out upcoming Tantra events at www.talktantratome.com/events, or click the link in the show notes. I can't wait to give you a big squeeze in real life. Okay, now that's it. Ta-ta for real. Ta-ta.